Hello everyone, welcome back to the biotech stage at the BioTech24 Forum. As you know, I'm Elena, your host for today's panel, Sowing the Seeds of Sustainability, focused on how biotech innovations are driving sustainability. Please welcome our esteemed moderator, Professor Vladimir Crnojević. Now, let the conversation begin.
Is it? Okay, good. We don't have any more communication with Elena. We can take over from here. Good. Welcome, everyone. We are a little bit late, but we will try to make it interesting and not to go beyond time. This is the panel Sowing the Seed of Sustainability, as you know from the, let me just... difficult without the glasses. Sowing the seeds of sustainability, and as you could see from the program, who are the panelists today, I will present them briefly, read their names, but they will have a chance to say a few words about themselves. I'm director of Biosense Institute, R&D Institute for Information Technology in Biosystems from Serbia, and I have a pleasure that I lead the panel with distinguished guests. Let's go in this order. So, Ala Voldman-Rancer, Vice President of Strategy and Policy, Good Food Institute, Israel. Dr. Karim Engelmark-Kasimje, is it good? Huh? Almost there. CEO and co-founder of Enginzyme, Sweden. Purushottam Kaushik, okay. Head Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, India, so colleague from the hosting institution here, and Catherine N. Foster with multiple affiliations in CV, shortly EIT Food Global Ambassador of, and EIT Food World Economic Forum Fellow. So the concept of this panel that we thought of is that I will give a short presentation of a few slides as a motivation for sustainability, and then we will go into the topic to see from the expertise from our panelists here from different fields. It's all related to agri-food sector. To see how we look currently at the processes, global processes related to sustainable development. So unfortunately, this PowerPoint is covered by us, but there is no text. Those are just a few pictures, and I hope that will be enough. So we have a situation that has been posed some years ago, but it's still valid. Don't bother, they can see that. That the population is growing, and we want to take care of everyone. You can see that the death rate in the newborn child is really getting to zero compared to something that was 100 years ago. It's not to be compared. At the same time, the footprint, ecological footprint that people are making on the planet is getting worse and worse every day. And we, with our colleagues from the medical parts, they work hard to make people live longer and longer. So the consequence of that is that soon we will have 10 billion people, and with the growth models from Africa and India and other regions of the global south, for sure we can say that it's going to be quick development. And this will need to cover 70% of the increase of the food production today, with however we know to do it. We believe here that those are new technologies that we can exploit, and we're going to talk about that. This is something that I took from Sapiens, book of Noah Yuval Harari, that the essence of agriculture is the ability to keep more people alive under the worst conditions. So this is what it is all about, and the global effort to do that is the strategy of Sustainable Development Goals adopted by United Nations in 2015 with the idea to mobilize a global community, so all the people on the planet, to jointly work on these 17 goals in order to achieve the targets set until 2030. Unfortunately, we are now 6 years 6 years until 2030, and the fulfillment of these goals here is very, very modest. I wanted to say miserable, but it's nicer word to say modest. And now it's really a time for all of us to think where we are going. So for this topic that we are talking about here, there are multiple of these goals that we tackle. Poverty, hunger, good health and well-being, clean water and sanitation, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, responsible consumption and production. Of course, behind is climate change, which is one of the hottest topic currently, and it will be related to what we are going to talk today. Life under the water, life on land, and basically others are also touched, because there is not a single that is not affected by the topic that we are having today. But just as an idea, this is my story and the vision of AI and current high tech that can help us to do this. This is some interesting picture about the vision of digital agriculture, where all the bits and pieces of, let's say, traditional agricultural production, including the enclosing ecosystem, is becoming the source of data. So instead of the good old farmer John, we have today a process that is generating enormous amounts of data. So if we start from soil, and today not only chemical analysis, but biological analysis and microbiome and DNA from soil, it's opening completely new perspective. Also for food production. Also, if you look at the plants today with genetic engineering and AI applications, we have a really completely different view on the breeding compared to something that we had, let's say, 30 or 40 years ago. Also, animal production, something that is very much tied to climate change and other effects that we are facing today, is becoming digital. And apart from the living world, there are a lot of technologies that are today available, like smart machines that can generate data and consume data, robotics, drones, satellites, something that is already in use in food production every day. But what is the common thing for all these parts, including the ecosystem, is that it's all now data-driven, data-based. And all this data, including genetic data, ends up in one place. We called it cloud. It's still called cloud, but I think that AI is the magic word that now changes everything. So we are coming to a point where the food production is becoming the digital high-tech process today. And from all this picture, we are coming to a point where, by collecting all this data, we get to this, that the border between the bio and digital is getting smaller and smaller. and probably that is a good intro for the name of this event, AI for Life, and to see how these technologies that are getting closer and closer today, how do they influence our life on this planet, and how do they reflect to sustainable development goals that we have as a common denominator for the whole planet, not just a few people. The idea is that we start in this order and to hear from our panelists within the context of UN framework for sustainable development goals, to tell us a bit about themselves, experience, and how their activities fit into this context. What are the most interesting goals for you, and how do you see the whole process? So.
Thank you. Thanks, Vladimir, and thanks for everyone that still are awake after lunch. Maybe I'll start with a short introduction of the Good Food Institute, GFI. We are a not-for-profit international network of organizations that are working to promote alternative proteins as part of the global food systems. And by referring to alternative proteins, I mean the array of technologies that are meant to develop food products that are more sustainable and resource efficient. This means plant-based products, making meat, poultry, fish out of plants. It refers to cultivated technologies where we take a sample of cells and grow within bioreactors to biomass, which is identical to genuine meat, and fermentation technologies that utilize the power of microorganisms, algae, fungi, and different bacteria to produce animal protein or other food ingredients. And this entire umbrella of technologies is a much more sustainable and resource-efficient way of making meat. From an SDG perspective, it directly impacts 9 out of the 17 goals. Just looking firstly on the climate, which I'm hiding here, alternative proteins emit between 30 to 90% less greenhouse gas emission than conventional animal agriculture. It uses almost 80 to 90% less land. By the way, land deforestation is caused, number one, by animal agriculture. And it uses much less natural fresh water resources, doesn't use antibiotics. There's the poverty element. So just in terms of conversion rate, it takes 9 calories fed to a chicken to get just 1 calorie of food back. And chicken is actually the most efficient animal in making food for humans. When you use plant-based, you take 100% of what you grow, you can eat. So assuming our goal to feed the growing population and the fact that, yes, we haven't done enough, and what we have done is really unbalanced globally, utilizing those technologies can really help reduce poverty. And this is just maybe some of the most significant SDGs. Yeah, maybe I'll stop now. And
before you give the floor to Karim, I have one comment to the general audience. So probably most of you know that, but just in case that some people don't know, the emission of the cow that we all love so much, beef, is getting, we just discussed this as a preparation for this panel. In Serbia, people didn't eat beef 20 years ago, maybe some stew or something. We are a pork nation. Now, in every restaurant, if you don't have on the menu Angus, dry age, or something, you don't go into that restaurant. So basically, the emission, the methane that is along with CO2, the primary cause of ozone layer destruction, is a direct consequence of that. And we have what Good Food Institute is doing is exactly along these lines to try to tackle this. But I was told the other thing, this is the trick question, I didn't prepare you for this. I was told recently that there are energy problems with the idea of lab-grown meat, that you have to heat everything to 37, 38 degrees. And if you want to heat all the meat on the planet, there is not enough energy for that. What would be a sustainable response to that?
You are right. So if you refer to the specific technology of cultivated meat, CE Delft, the research institute in the US, has done a technology, a life cycle analysis, and all the benefits from specifically cultivated meat will probably come by using renewable energy. So until then, probably the more efficient, energy efficient technologies are in the area of plant-based and fermentation.
So in the end, it all boils down to the energy. So we will see how to the end of the panel. Karim, tell us about yourself, what you're doing, and how do you fit into SDG with your activities?
Thank you very much for having me on this panel and for inviting me. And I live in Stockholm, Sweden. I'm CEO of a company called Enginzyme. What we do is to green the chemical industry. So in order for me to try to explain what we do, I have a challenge for you. I want you to find one thing in this room that does not come from the chemical industry in any shape or form. Let me know if you find something. The air? Maybe. I can tell you that your bodies, 40% or 50% of the nitrogen in your bodies come from fertilizer and ultimately from the Haber-Bosch process. It's a 5 trillion euro industry. So it's a pivot, it's a fundamental pillar of how we live. And the way all these products are being done, the paint on the wall, the paint on your clothes, the food you eat, it's usually made by taking fossil starting materials, converting them into a product using something called catalysis. So you need to do something, you need to add some compound that catalyzes this transformation from the starting materials to products. And it also requires high amounts of heat, energy, and it produces lots and lots of waste, more waste than product usually. Another catalyst in nature are enzymes. Enzymes are catalysts. So, and enzymes use less energy. They can be used on bio-based starting materials, and they don't produce hardly any waste at all, usually. So what Enginzyme does, in a nutshell, is to enable the use of enzymes in chemical production. That includes also food, it includes wastewater treatment, etc., etc. So Enginzyme is enabling the industry, however slow it wants to change, to save money because energy is a cost. Waste is also a cost, but to do this in a more green and sustainable way. So in terms of these sustainability goals, mostly on the number 12, but I would say we also fit in a bunch of the other ones as well. It's a very, very important thing. And something that many people don't always think about when you live your lives is what's behind the scenes when you put on your clothes in the morning or use your toothpaste. It's something that is really, really important. And how does AI fit into this? Well, those enzymes that we use, we can improve them and engineer them. We are, and we're doing that with artificial intelligence and machine learning. So without getting too deep into that, it's lots of data, lots of engineering that AI is super helpful for. So thank you.
Are you using AI already, regularly, or it's something that you expect to be exploited?
No, we use it regularly, and it enables us to be faster. So my team is probably a tenth of the size of an engineering team of any given chemical company, but we're 10 times faster just because we use AI and machine learning. So yeah, we use it already. We've been doing that for a couple of years.
Okay, can you? This is just my curiosity. one example for AI that you do in everyday practice?
So we want to make the enzymes reusable. We want to make sure that they can be used over and over again to lower the cost. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense for a big company to use the enzyme. So in order for an enzyme to be more stable, we need to change the sequence, change how it's shaped. So for a human brain to look at billions of protein structures and understand which ones are stable, which ones are not, understanding why, is close to impossible. It's done in a second with machine learning. So when we teach our computer what stable enzymes look like, and then apply it to the enzymes that we want to make stable, it goes a lot faster.
Fantastic, thank you. Next, Purushottam, tell us about yourself. Where do you come from, what do you do, and how do your activities fit into this beautiful picture?
Yeah, thank you, Vladimir. Yeah, you can call me Puru. Too long a name even by Indian standards.
Good.
I live in Mumbai, and I joined World Economic Forum 5 years back. And we have this center called Center for Fourth Industrial Revolution, mainly looking at how emerging technologies like AI, IoT, blockchain will really transform some of the core sectors, especially in India. And maybe I'll talk about something which we did, especially in the context of agriculture, and I'll try to relate to SDGs as well. As you would know, we represent almost like 17% of the global population. 50% of this population is associated with agriculture. And almost like 85% of this 50% is small holding farmers. So we're talking about like almost like a 500 million population here. They are owning on the average around 1.5 acre of land, which pretty much creates a big challenge both in terms of adoption of technologies or even sustaining themselves. Just to give you maybe two or three context, the smallholding farmers, almost most of them don't really have access to finance, which would mean like they will have to go to middlemen, brokers, borrowing at almost like 28 to 30% rate of interest. And possibly here in this room, everybody would know like there is no business which can sustain at these kind of rate of interest. So one of the job that we were looking at is that how do we really enable farmers for enabling finance and insurance for buying seeds or fertilizers or pesticides and sustain themselves, providing, picking up the data and then using AI and creating their cash books so that banks can give them more organized finance. The second big issue which we were facing is that most of these farmers are dependent on so much conventional wisdom, which they have been using it for so many years. Possibly they are a business person who takes the highest amount of risk, but possibly gets the lowest amount of returns. They don't really know what the soil health condition is. They don't really know the weather. They are not aware of the market situation, as and when the produce will come, what price they will hit. And most of the time, they are on the wrong side. So how do we really enable these farmers to kind of make some of the maybe AI-based analysis, which they can, when do you seed, which variety of the seed that you should be picking up, when do you really apply water, when do you apply pesticides. It's like all kind of decision cycles that they do it on the farm is pretty much right now based on convention. How do we convert them into more data-based sciences? And as soon as they harvest, the problem there is that the wastage because of the infrastructure post-harvest is pretty lacking. Almost starting from 15 to 20%, which is in the case of grains. In case of horticulture or vegetables, etc., it goes up to 40% wastage. And pretty much it's so difficult to connect, like I'm talking of now 500 million, to connect with the market and getting the best prices. So this was the situation that we were dealing with when we looked at, and I'm going to give you one example of, like, to your question, Rademir, on how AI gets applied. We looked at a small district of around 55,000 villages, and we started this pilot of like, let's get a look at the whole value chain and the problems and look for AI. So we used 4 use cases. One was how do you use AI for creating digital quality reports, which can become the baseline between the seller and the buyer. So government was also an enabler here. The second use case was picking up the soil and using AI for creating a soil health report for these farmers, which could be used for providing better advisories for fertilizers, pesticides. And the third one, which was that how do you create a market connect platform to connect the farmers and the buyers. Now, we are through 2 years into this project, and a farmer family usually runs $120 a month. That's the kind of a number that we have there. They could increase the income or profit by almost like 37%. So $120 per month is like, when we calculated, this is where it is. The yield went up by 21%, and the use of fertilizer and pesticides came down by 9%. So that's the kind of a real life scenario which we have. The report is pretty much live. And when we looked at this whole thing, now we are looking at scaling it to all the states. And not only just this project is called AI for Agriculture Innovation. Pretty much now 2.5 years in action. We are working with various other countries to see how can we really scale these learnings.
Okay. Big country, big problems. So when you have 1.4 billion people, you can guess that a lot of things there are to be solved. Since you have the connection with the startup ecosystem, can you give us, for the things that you mentioned, some of them are known to me, and I know that in the audience there are people who are close to that. Hopefully we will have questions at the end. But can you give us a few interesting examples of startups that are solving the issues that you mentioned? And did they make any money? Are they really successful, or they are just startups?
Yeah. So beside like being 1.4 billion people, it's one of the biggest startup nation as well. We have almost like 80,000 startups right now, and more than 1,000 are only operating in agriculture and agri-tech services. And it was difficult to really see them scale, because most of them, when they were trying to roll out services towards the farmers, the bigger challenge has been the data part. Like, how do you really enable data for land records, warehousing, soil health, weather, so that they can leverage the data and can roll out services to the farmers? So it's a kind of a journey that we have seen. Most of the startups have started with offering services as a B2B. So they were offering services to banks, insurance companies, or fertilizer companies and pesticide companies, so that they can sustain themselves. But the real audience is farmers. So how do you really take information to the farmers has been one of our core areas to work on. For sure, beside the data, which is one of the very important lever which government has undertaken a big project and we are supporting them, is an agriculture data exchange, or a national agri stack is what we are calling it, where you can visualize it in this way that all the critical data sets, we have identified 15 of them for the country, they will be made available through API. And any startup, even if like they have one of the most innovation services in fintech or insurance or advisory services on fertilizer, pesticide, or even like logistics services, they can really use this data and then can start offering services to the farmers. It's a journey. It cannot be like binary. We have seen few startups have become global, like one of them, Cropin, is an example, which is right now present in 103 countries. And they're not just offering services in India, but they're offering services across Brazil and US and everywhere else. Because finally, science can expand. The remote sensing doesn't change, the AI doesn't change. It's just a question of how do you apply it in a value chain, and then look at reaching out to the farmers and find your revenue model.
Okay, now, Catherine, sorry, but just I have another question for Puro. He mentioned this when you say value chain. And what comes to my mind, India, with such a big number of farmers, probably the biggest in the world, making networks and aggregation and cooperatives of farmers is probably the good way to go. I think, and digital technology gives you the possibility for that. Everybody has mobile phone today, and they can get connected somehow. I know that it's not an easy task, that transparency is the problem, lack of trust, and other things. Do you have any examples that might use blockchain or some technology that brings transparency and reliability to the whole system?
Yeah. So I think there are two layers of it. When we say technology or AI, it's in reality it is a phygital world. Phygital would mean like a physical and a digital world. On a digital side, yes, I can talk about an example where we have around 40,000 farmers who grow turmeric in Meghalaya, which is a district pretty remote in India, northeastern district, and they produce world's best turmeric. and it's exported all globally. The problem that they were facing is that while they were producing the best turmeric, it gets mixed up with cheaper varieties by the traders, and then the value gets eroded. So farmers don't get the real value. It's mostly the marketers or people who are in the middle chain that are making money. So this state and we worked together and we looked at how do we make blockchain. At the time of quality, maybe checking in the beginning and packing, the QR codes were inserted and the blockchain technology was all made through, so that even the last consumer who is picking up the packet can see where the quality is coming in from. That was the assurance that we saw. On the physical side, I would say that farmers don't trust technology so easily. Such a big, like you can't tell that, okay, from AI you use this advisory and tomorrow you apply pesticide and you will be fine. So we had to use an intermediary layer, we call them agriculture extension officers. There are 200,000 of them who work with almost like 3-4 villages each. There are 750,000 villages, by the way. So for each village, 3 or 4 group of villages, there is one extension officer. And there are cooperatives who represent around 1,000 farmers each. Now they are the real people whom the FPO lead, farmer producer organization, a cooperative leader or extension officers are the real people who need to be enabled with AI. Farmer will build a trust. They already have trust in this ecosystem. So one is like delivering services through them, but also for AI, the most important part is the feedback. Like, okay, I give you advisory on pesticide or fertilizer, but when you apply it, what was the impact or happening on the crop? Did the cotton crop still fail? So you pick up the pest images or the crop images subsequently after the application, and then you look at building into AI algorithm and seeing, okay, how do you really change? So both, it's a loop which we need to build through the trusted systems on the ground.
Thank you. Fantastic examples. 200,000 extension services. Wow. Catherine, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. I don't know how to follow up such expertise. As you see, my title is quite long, but that's also because my age is quite long as well. But I wear multiple hats because I come from a diverse background, and we reminisced last night that my first professional international work was in Bangalore, India in the 80s, just to give you a sense of where I've come from, working on geography and environmental science. And previously, we have to remember that the Sustainable Development Goals, actually the precursors go back to Stockholm in 72 and to Rio in 92. So those were sort of my goals all along in the work that I've done. But I'm a recovered climate diplomat for Canada, who took environmental science and background, and then I moved to Switzerland where I really zoomed in on technical innovation. And I had the pleasure also of working with the EU's Climate Kick, which is the sister organization to EIT Food. And that's where we really focused in and zoomed on some of these SDGs. And I think I've basically covered all of the SDGs in my work. But the one that keeps popping up wherever I go, wherever I work, including right now at the EIT Food, which is the world's largest food innovation initiative, and with the WEF as a fellow, is 17 partnerships and collaborations. It's almost become a trope that we talk about collaboration, but how do you do it? And that's what fascinates me most, and also how do we finance the goals? And that's where the data innovation nexus happens for me. And I also think the S in sustainability and sustainable actually is about systems innovation and how we connect those dots. And we see that as very local and very contextualized. But I'd like to take a minute to talk about EIT Food, if I could. For those that don't know, the EU has set up these knowledge innovation communities, and every year or two it launches these innovation communities based on global challenges and EU challenges. And it started after the Euro crisis with energy, digital, and climate, and then we have food and health, etc. And the EIT Food is the largest of those kicks, and it basically unites countries, universities, corporates, and organizations and startups to drive sustainable agriculture, food security, health, protein diversification across the board. And it does that through collaborative research, entrepreneurship programs, startup programs, and these EU grants for collaborative initiatives as well, which I think is really important because it's not just about the front-end innovation, it's also about how to shift the market and shift the finance and the data and the policies in order to enable those conditions to happen. And we basically support that systems innovation, and I have a few key initiatives that I just want to mention about biotech and AI in particular. So on biotech, we have education and training, knowledge dissemination, policy recommendations, consumer testing. We provide facilities, entrepreneurship programs, public-private partnerships, and basically that ecosystem coordination, number 17, which is, I think, essential. And we've allocated already just 13 million to diversified proteins as an example, and programs. And basically under those, I'll just mention 3 programs that we're contributing to or leading. We have a consumer observatory because we know that consumer elements are really key to shifting, especially on alternative proteins or diversified proteins. We have the AI Factory for Agri-Food, which is a collaboration with Microsoft and Danone. And we have a protein diversification think tank. But we also have an ecosystem of startups and organizations working on the whole value chain, on innovation, including on data and AI elements within that. What I think, though, the questions that I have about the work we're doing is some of the assumptions around data, availability, compatibility, and willingness to share. So what you were saying about data as the new harvest, really. So Farmer John or Farmer Joan in Australia is not going to want to share their data. And we have to think about the cost benefits of that and how we can incentivize that and bring that together. And then for me, my personal passion, I was running the Green Digital Finance Alliance, which came out of the Fourth Industrial Revolution dialogue. How do we use and leverage that data to show financial institutions, incumbent ones, that we can unlock the financing for Farmer Joan and John, as well as for the whole value chain to make this transition?
Yes, thank you. Like that song in English, when in New York, Canadian in Europe. You seem very passionate for European things. So you mentioned that your favorite is the 17. So it's about collaboration. But these things that you're doing are mostly EU oriented. How do you see those 17 are for the whole globe? And how do you see the effects and possibility to cooperate with other parts of the world?
I think there are 3 elements to that. One, our collaborations, partnerships are not ring-fenced by country boundaries or EU boundaries. So we actually have a lot of programs in the Balkans as well as internationally. We are collaborating with the World Economic Forum on its food innovation hubs. And also we have now new mechanisms under the Horizon program to enable Canadians, Swiss, others, other partners from around the world to collaborate with our organizations. On top of that, I think we are very active in all of the different committees and forums. So for example, I volunteer my time to work on the climate bonds initiative and some of the World Bank work. So I think the knowledge in our ecosystem is also working across the board to ensure that happens.
Okay, fantastic. So for the next round, I wanted to have a chat on global awareness of the sustainability issues and how do people perceive them and do they understand really that it is a problem. One example is we have the lithium mining issue in Serbia currently, and not into getting pro or contra. The point is that people don't understand the concept of sustainability, that everything, agriculture is polluting the environment. If you do deforestation to make, to plant the corn, and you use fertilizer, and you have the runoff into the soil, and it pollutes the water, and so on. So people perceive that it's like, that's something natural, and other things are not natural. And then when you ask, okay, what's in your mobile phone? It's a lithium battery. What, do you know where the lithium comes from? I don't care. It's not my problem. But it's the problem. Everybody has the same problem. So what I learned yesterday, because I'm electrical engineer and AI, doing AI for the last 20 years. Yesterday I had a meeting with people who are from this community, Sustainable Development Goals and UN community. But what I learned is about the construction. So everywhere around the world, okay, in the United States, the wood is used quite a lot for the houses, in Canada, I guess, as well. But here, in Germany, in India, it's a brick, fire brick, that you take the earth, clay, and then you burn it in the oven to make a brick. And this is 5 times bigger emission of CO2 than concrete itself. So in Switzerland, most of the houses, private houses for living, are made of pure concrete. And this is like the same thing with cows emission that I mentioned. I traveled all around the world, I'm educated, but I didn't have a clue about that. So what do we need to have? Is it education? Is it information for people globally to get out of their hole and look around and understand that we have a common problem? If we are firing bricks because this is the way we do it, this doesn't mean that it's a good thing. We have to look around and to see what others are doing. So from your perspective, this is, I think, relevant for the artificial meat story. What do you see? How do people react to this? Do they understand that meat production is a global issue? And are they willing to accept this?
So it's a very interesting question. What people perceive and what people perceive as natural and as whole food, and without really knowing what did these products pass through from the farm until they reach the plate, is not as natural, as clean, and as pretty as it is perceived. But I will not take the time now to explain it. I think there are many things in our technological advancement that presented the decoupling from animal to technology. Insulin is one of them. We used to take it from pigs. We now make it at labs. Many other medicines, and there's a transition and there's a technological barrier to pass. Eventually, what we believe is that once these products will be as tasty, as cost, and as convenient and accessible as all the other products, that will be the main elements that will eventually impact consumers when they are making the choices. I think history shows that people react when it's right in front of you, and climate change and sustainability challenges are not in front of most of the population. So I think there's some still learning curve and barrier to pass, but I think it's our role. It's the role of this conference, it's the role of NGOs, it's the role of policymakers, for institutions and research centers to bridge this gap until consumers can take the lead, to advocate, to explain, to progress technology and research, because this is where we devote our professional life to, and I think it will be challenging to target that this will be the understanding of the majority of the population.
Sorry, if I may jump in, is it okay?
Please.
Yeah, I have to comment because I'm very emotional about the word natural. In fact, I hate the word natural, or I hate how people use the word natural. People have this perception that natural is always good. Newsflash, anthrax is natural. It's not good for you. Most drugs that people use that destroying people's lives are natural. So I really, really think it's our job, including everyone here, to educate people. Coming back to what you said, Vladimir, about education, what does it mean and what is actually good for you and for the planet, and upgrade our language. I think it's really a lot about language, how we define things. I think we have a lot of work to do there.
Catherine, you wanted to comment?
Do you want to go ahead?
Ladies
Go ahead,
first.
please go ahead and complete.
Thank you. Yeah, and I want to pick up on a few of those points too, because I think you gave a really good perspective, the contextual elements that is really essential to systemic change, because we have very different building materials, as you said, similarly with agriculture, food, and other products. And when we say people, it's such a big generalization. And I think there's a big difference between the sort of prescriptive approach and then the marketing approach as well as the information approach. So if, for example, have, for the building materials, at Climate Kick we had the building accelerator, and we worked with the cement companies in Switzerland. We had the products, the innovations are there, but it's the system, it's the manufacturers, the lobby group, in different countries have their tools fitted out for decades. So it requires huge infrastructure change for them. Even if the consumer is asking for different types of building material, the regulations are in place, the manufacturing, the cost, all of this is really in place. And I think that's what I was trying to say about systems innovation is find your entry point, whether it's a policy driver, then back it up with the communications and the marketing piece as well as the actual products. Because we know that front-end innovations exist. We have patents on shelves on the walls that are just sitting there ready for market uptake. But that market uptake has to involve that very contextualized, localized. Final example is, you mentioned I'm Canadian, but I also served in the US. Trying to sell anything as climate friendly in parts of the US is not going to happen. But if you talk about the health or the convenience, that's where the contextual element comes in.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add. Yeah. See, maybe coming from a developing world, but then I used to have a strong belief that no one, like everybody likes to talk about sustainability, but no one wants to pay for sustainability. Like who would say that, okay, I have produced this through all the sustainable practices, but then I will pay maybe 30% higher. No one wants to pay for it. And that's the reality, but not just in developing world. I don't even think that even in developed world, no one is willing to pay for the sustainability as a price. And that's the biggest issue. More than awareness, I'll give you 2 or 3 examples possibly relate. And I'm talking about farmers, like as India started developing the irrigation systems and taking the canal water and the water closer to the farms, slowly farmers started shifting from like more sustainable crops like millets to non-sustainable crops like maybe rice and sugarcane. And practically when you grow rice and sugarcane, you end up like exporting it to all the developed worlds, practically pulling out all the fresh water and sending it abroad. That was what was happening. Now, they are more, their business economics justified that why should we take risk on millets when we don't know the pricing and when we don't know who is going to be, what pricing is going to be bought for, or when will I deal with floods or kind of drought. So it's better to put paddy and at least get a committed price. Another example is that in case of cotton, we have a lot of pest infestation, the pink bollworm and other kind of infestation which happens because of weather and soil conditions. And farmers who possibly are owning only 1.5 acre land, their pesticide application is not really highly mechanical and using sciences. They pretty much like use pesticides pretty much manual. 98% of the pesticide does not even address the specimen. It goes into soil and water. And how would you just tell them like, okay, fine, this is something which you are doing wrong, you are investing more money, you possibly are not able to still help your cause. So we had to bring in, obviously, use AI. They were uploading pest images, and we had to prove over a period of 3 crop seasons continuously that how an AI-based pesticide application may help you finally. Till the time they did not understand the economics behind it, it did not work. Maybe another example I'll tell you, and possibly many of you might have heard. The northern side of the country, which is like Punjab, Haryana, and some of these places which grow paddy as well as wheat, they burn the stubble. Stubble is like the last portion of the crop when they cut it after harvesting. There are two options. You kind of take it out through agriculture machinery and then use it for your agriculture recycling products. That's pretty costly. Like per acre cost comes out almost like 1,500 rupees, so practically significant money for those farmers who are earning just $120 a month. So they started burning it. Now what happens is that it is just this whole smoke. In the month of October and November, Delhi is unlivable. And most of the people, many of the people like who we thought like would be enjoying in Delhi, they started moving to other cities. So such a big city is becoming unlivable. When the economics were like, we're trying to figure out like, would Delhi people pay more tax to be justifying to the farmers that they can invest in agriculture machinery? It never worked. Political policies or whatever, it never worked. So unless the economics justifies sustainability, it's very difficult to apply it in a real-time scenario. Other we should be willing to pay for it. But when will we be willing to pay for it?
Yes, let me tell you that we have the same sport here. We burn everything around the earth. It's not only reduced cheaper, but the point is that microbiome of the soil is completely destroyed. So there is nothing after that. But we, even as an institute, we work for the ministry, and together with UNDP, we developed the system for detection from the satellite, and then to set the inspectors to make a fine for the farmers who were doing that. And then it turned out that the legal framework is not good enough, because farmer said, it wasn't me, it was my neighbor, he hates me. So he set up the fire. Yeah. And you don't have the basis to prosecute him because there is no proof that it's him. Now we have enforced the change of law that says now, if your field is burning, you are the guilty one. We don't care. Find whoever it is, keep your eye on that. There is no excuse for you. So this is what, we have the same problems, global problems. Yeah. Catherine, you wanted to add something?
Exactly. I think that, I mean, it's a great start to this type of dialogue about, the carrot and stick, the incentivization of shifts and change anywhere on the value chain or the ecosystem, and on that system's perspective. So we have the carrot, the sticks, and we saw that also in biofuels for shipping industry, that we had a sulfur cap, but the capacity to actually investigate and fine was impossible. So we came up with a technical solution. But again, who's going to pay for the technical solution, which is going to be more costly than actually just paying a fine? So that type of incentivization on the stick side. But now we have a plethora of different frameworks. We have Capitals Coalition, we have biodiversity credits coming down, we have carbon credits. So this is where I think we can actually start leveraging some of the incentivization, the data, where we can, to incentivize, to pay for those ecosystem services so that we can create that change. I know I'm speaking very generally, but this actually can happen, and we do see it happening at that very local regional level. And I think this is also where we're talking about AI. We also see the enabling capacities of technology. So I've worked in blockchain and AI for some time now as well. And when you see, for example, the methane reduction formulas, so every couple of weeks I see a new announcement about a new formula that's going to reduce methane at that industrial level. But those formulas are very biome specific. So now what we have is an MIT startup that's part of the EIT food community that is actually using AI to predict the biome, then to be able to say, actually, this formula is going to work the best, and take that reduction from 5 or 10% to 30%. So I think we have elements at every level that can provide the solutions. But again, it's very much comes down to what is the incentivization? Who is going to pay for this shift and the transformation? Because right now, that diagram you had, the drone technology, the technological capacities for regenerative farming, or for even what you were mentioning about the farmers, the cost is on the shoulders of the farmer right now.
Yes, many countries are trying to solve that by incentivizing, by subsidies. We see in Europe, it's huge budget for subsidies. but you have to have a strict control on that. For every euro, it's 700 billion euros budget, but you have to keep your eye on every euro. If you don't do that, it will go away. I wanted just to make a comment, another trivia for the cement and the lobbies and the factories. I was invited last week to talk, to be on the panel on the civil engineering conference. I don't have a clue about that. I built a house, but that doesn't qualify to be an expert on the topic. But from the point of sustainability, so I went through and I asked the colleagues who are knowledgeable in that. And it's interesting, again, the global problem. We said that growing population will be 10 billion soon, not in Europe. Europe is going down. So global south is going to make another billion people, most of that in Africa. But the point is that it will basically induce the building of 140 billion houses, million houses, sorry, 140 million houses. And if you convert that to the building materials, to cement that is needed from the factories, it's a ridiculous amount. But what is more interesting, in Africa, they don't have clinker, the critical component of the cement, very small amount of that. So it means that it's produced somewhere else and brought by ships who have the emission to come to Africa to be, I mean, it's a mess. How we are going to do that globally, it's very tricky question. So it's not simple at all. This is what I wanted to say. Another round that I think you have a lot to say about it, but from different angles. You are coming from the startup country. I mean, if there is a brilliant example for that, that's Israel. We are talking about the global things. And wherever I travel, they are talking about startups. We had, at our institute, we had one of the top scientists from MIT last week, and he was talking about the startup ecosystem in MIT, and that's really crazy. I mean, I was there a few months ago at the dinner, and they didn't tell jokes. They're just talking about startups, who invested where, and so biotech, it's completely out of control. But when I travel to some undeveloped countries, they are also talking about startups, and they have technoparks and this and that. But the point is that something that I learned in Israel, they have the saying, I learned that from Golan all the way to Red Sea, we are not afraid to fail. And this philosophy that exists requires that you have the environment and the society who is there to support you to be brave. Otherwise, if you are alone and there's no one to support you, that's the important point. Give us a glimpse from Israeli perspective and the startup community, and how do you think this model could be exported globally to India, for example?
Yeah, it's a good point. They're not afraid to fail because they realize most startups will fail. It's a fact. It's a fact. And yes, there are many startups across the field. I think, though, I have something to say about building an innovative ecosystem. I don't necessarily think that innovation is just can be done just by creating startups. I do think that there is room for innovation across the entire value chain, whether it's alternative proteins and other food tech fields, or even different climate innovations. I think one of the key understandings that we had from the alternative protein innovative ecosystem in Israel that can be applied elsewhere is that just entrepreneurs and even a risk-taking culture and maybe seed funding for growing startups is absolutely not enough to ensure that these startups actually continue, because startups need so much more, not only just the seed money, the rounds of A and B and C. They need the public funding to de-risk the investment of the private sector. They need collaboration with the local industry. So there needs to be local industry. They need collaboration with the academia. So there needs to be relevant research conducted in the academia. They need talented workforce to grow and to recruit people. So there need to be training programs in the relevant disciplines and fields. They need level playing field and regulatory frameworks for them to really be able to test their technology, do proof of concept, create pilot, scale up. And even if they don't plan to scale completely in their country, which is probably the case for Israel because it's a very, very small market, they need to have those pathways and collaborations with other countries and bilateral agreements and trade agreements so that they can grow elsewhere. And it doesn't mean that the government doesn't gain anything from that, because there's an IP created and the trade in IP and a lot of societal and economic benefit that still remain. So by creating a startup nation, you really must look at the entire value chain of production and making sure that you address each and every part of that, because then you'll just have venture creation and determination.
Great. They're just giving me the sign that we don't have as much time as I thought, so the clock is lying, but nevertheless. Karim, are you afraid to fail as a startup? Or were you afraid to fail? How did you get there?
Yeah, I mean, in order to start a company, you need to have two things. You need to lack a complete sense of reality and not be afraid to fail, and you have to be a little bit nuts. And I am both of those things. So yes, no, I'm not afraid to fail.
You tick all the boxes.
I tick all the boxes.
By the way, when I said most startups will fail, excluding you.
Yeah.
I didn't say
everyone else but my one. Oh, we're not a startup anymore. We're a growth company now, so it's okay. But I can say something about the infrastructure and everything you said. I totally agree. But there's another aspect to it, and I believe that in order for innovation to happen, in order for somebody to be brave enough to take a leap and start a company, or in any other way that you want to realize your idea, you need to enable individuals. It's about what comes down to the specific person that feels that they have the possibility and the right, culturally, economically, everything to actually do that. And we need to work harder on that as well, I think, because Sweden is also actually a startup nation. Sweden has a lot of, I'm only half Swedish, so I can brag about Sweden. It's okay. So we have social security, and we have, for example, scientists employed at university by law own their own inventions. It doesn't belong to the university, even if they pay your salary. So these are factors that I could really helped my startup. This was a decade ago, but anyway, helped us to take that leap, because we could patent it. It's ours. We felt that, okay, if we fail, we are likely to fail at that point, not now. Then we will find something else to do, and that's okay. I mean, my kids will still be fine. I can still put food on their table. Those are important factors.
Great. This is why I wanted to hear this, because it's a global thing, and those are all good recipes for sustainable. We are talking about sustainability, sustainable startup ecosystems. So, could you give me in 2 sentences? Nemanja is going to kill me. What is the Indian case?
Now, while India may have 100 plus unicorns and a significant number still coming up, we still have, I think, significant advantage is on account of data, because India possibly is one of the most data-rich and data-enabled country, in spite of we having a low per capita GDP. We all of us have a biometric-based authentication, which many of the developed countries may not have. We have the most digitally enabled financial ecosystem and taxation ecosystem as well. So that is generating so much of data. it'll be possibly a kind of a tragedy in case we lose this whole advantage and we let those big sevens capture all the value and then make another few trillion dollars of countries like India. So that's something which most of the governance structures are looking at, that how do we really enable startup ecosystem by enabling data. The second is like we certainly lack, and we would like to we are trying to learn from even Israel on how do you really create those co-innovation ecosystems as well as some kind of a validation, because the challenge in to roll out services for health or for agriculture or for urban is that how do you validate some of these startup solutions before you roll out on mass scale? Because whether we talk of education, whether we talk of health, we almost, like by any standards, we will be 1/10 of how much we need. So technology is the only way we can fill this gap. So both sides, both on the power for technology to serve our citizens in terms of cost of delivery, and then certainly somehow capture this whole value erosion which is happening only in the hands of some of the data-rich companies who have all the resources to ensure that the value, in relative terms, moving ahead, we should not become poorer. That's the danger, right? Because if all the value shifting happens of the AI capture happens in few countries, we'll end up becoming poorer in that context. So how do we ensure that the assets that we have are able to we are able to leverage through startup ecosystem?
Thank you. Catherine, with your experience, you might have a comment on this.
Just a quick comment, I hope. Rather than talking only about startups, let's talk about entrepreneurship and the market and the fact that we can shift both. So entrepreneurs are everywhere, in every institution, in every organization. We need to embolden them also to step up. And startups, we have to go beyond the notion of unicorns and those investment rounds. We also have to work with the investors to take longer term, different types of risks in their investments. I'd like to see an ROI, meaning return on impact. And that's what I think institutions like the EU's EIT Food can do. We're working with, I think, all of you in every country, and we've even had a mission to India. And it's that type of collaboration, that type of systemic capacity where we can not only create the entrepreneurs and the startups, but shift the market so that it actually also shifts the consumer, and the entire ecosystem is what's really needed.
Yes, that's great. We have to think of the sustainability of the startup ecosystem. So I will have one trick question for the end, but before that, I want to ask the audience if there is any comment or question or something. Please.
Regarding the sustainable energy, I'm coming from automotive industry. We're using a lot of aluminum, also lithium. That's all mined. And I also come from a coal mining industry. Those corpses of mines are left all over the third world countries where we export these minerals. What we can do with these corpses of mines that we have left? How this is sustainability actually, where we revert these ecosystems back to something that was used to be, I don't want to say natural, but what it used to be after exploiting. Is there any ideas or something happened in this way? Because we're paying the cost.
How much time do we have left?
You should start. The clock is ticking.
I mean, it's a great question. We should probably discuss it outside afterwards. But, I mean, can you fill those mines with something made from CO2 to remove CO2 from the air?
Yeah.
Well, CO2, this landscape is destroyed.
Yeah.
It has a lot of mines, others that are closed, for mines impact, other things that are impacted.
This is about landscape restoration, really, and what we can do. And I think that's very local and contextual, and it's a huge question around circularity and also reconstruction. So if we're displacing an industry, we have to think about what's going to replace it as well in a sustainable way.
Any other questions? No. So this panel was on sustainability and about the future, where we're going. But since the whole event is called AI for Life, I want 1 or 2 sentences from each of you. What do you think? What is the future? Will it be okay? Will it use it in a good way and everybody will be happy? Or it's going to replace us in 20, 30 years' time?
It's a last comment. We have to be optimistic. I would just say one thing, because I think we heard the entire day about the power of AI in accelerating development and price parity and everything in medicine, and it's the same for food throughout the entire value chain. I'm not an expert in AI. We keep saying that there is potential to incorporate AI into this and this and this. What I think is that the AI experts need to come and get involved in those industries that are in their early stages, where companies start to generate data, and before this data becomes completely standardized, and needs to create those standards of how to capture data, what to do with it, so that we can generate out of it something that is good for all. Just earlier this year, the Bezos Earth Fund published a challenge of $100 billion for AI solutions with 3 topics. Sustainable proteins were one of them. We need more Bezos funds like that.
Great, so you're optimist. Next one.
I already told you I'm a little bit nuts and have no reality sense, so I don't know if you trust me, but I think we'll be okay.
Okay.
No, I mean, I'm looking at what we had to do 10 years ago when we started Enginezyme and what I would do now if we had these tools. And I sort of come to a first conclusion is right now tools are available to small teams that were only available to large corporations thanks to artificial intelligence and all the systems around that, how to process a lot of data, how to limit your test set and do things for less money and do it faster. These are all keys to success of making sustainable technology reaching the world. So yes, I am optimistic, and I think this is a way to also enable entrepreneurs from all parts of the world, not only the ones that are fortunate enough to be in the rich parts. Yes.
Great to hear from the people who is in enzyme world where AI can synthesize enzymes. I wouldn't be so optimistic on that. So, Puru, your view, one sentence.
No, certainly I will be positive, but it's also a question for maybe a poll here. But one thing I can assure is that the room will be half divided.
Okay. Catherine.
I'm an optimist, clearly, but I think we also need to learn from the cross-sectoral experience of the last decade, in particular with the emergence of technology, the convergence of technology, because there's going to be invisible impacts that not even AI can predict what the impacts of AI are going to be. So we need to just proceed with caution and learn from everything from the data management across carbon markets, across all of our blockchain dialogues. There's so much that has been done in other sectors, but that's actually the beauty of it. There's a convening power around AI. We have a conference here that's talking about health and food and nutrition. That type of convening is really important in this dialogue.
Great. I must say in the end that I'm not that optimistic, but I'm optimistic about this panel that since not many people left, that you enjoyed this at least as much as I did, because it was quite informal and interesting discussion without strict rules and topics. So I would like to thank the panelists for this that we jointly made, and hope to see you on some other panel with a similar topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.